It's been a big week when it comes to space travel. Today, SpaceX's mega Starship rocket completed its first full test flight, returning to Earth without exploding after blasting off from Texas. Meanwhile, Boeing's space capsule developed more leaks and ran into thruster trouble during its first test flight with astronauts as it closed in on the International Space Station today. Manisa Danabalan joins us live to talk more about all these new developments in space exploration. Manisa, a lot to talk about this week.
Yes, Nicole, it's been a busy couple of days because it's not just SpaceX and Boeing. China and New Zealand have accomplished significant achievements as well.
We have liftoff.
The SpaceX Starship rocket took off from its Starbase facility in South Texas in spectacular fashion today. It was the fourth launch of the world's biggest and most powerful rocket, standing nearly 37 stories tall. The three previous flight demos ended in explosions. This time, the rocket and the spacecraft managed to splash down in a controlled fashion, making the hour-long flight the longest and most successful yet.
Starship made it through re-entry.
Starship was empty as it soared above the Gulf of Mexico and headed east on a flight to the Indian Ocean. Within minutes, the first stage booster separated from the spacecraft and splashed into the Gulf precisely as planned after firing its engines. The company's CEO Elon Musk posting to X, writing, "Despite loss of many tiles and a damaged flap, Starship made it all the way to a soft landing in the ocean." It was a critical milestone in the company's plan to eventually reuse the rocket that NASA and Musk are counting on to get humanity back to the moon and then further onto Mars.
I watch with excitement how these developments are basically increasing the access to space. It means that in the future, when my students graduate, there will be an increased need of engineers, business people, trainers of physicists, science graduates.
Meantime, it was a big achievement for Boeing's new Starliner capsule that rocketed into orbit yesterday. Despite some helium leaks, it arrived at the International Space Station. Mission Control says last-minute thruster trouble almost derailed the docking operation for the first test flight with astronauts. 4 of the capsule's 28 thrusters went down, but NASA test pilots managed to restart 3 of them. By then, Starliner passed up the first docking opportunity and circled the world for an extra hour before docking.
Some really great expeditious work.
Boeing is finally catching up 4 years behind SpaceX. After NASA's space shuttles retired, the space agency hired both companies to ferry astronauts to and from the space station. SpaceX's taxi service began in 2020. Boeing was supposed to start around the same time, but was held up for years by safety concerns and other troubles. SpaceX is now far ahead of its competitor, already selling tourist trips around the moon. But it's not just the United States participating in this new age space race.
It's been a huge week. China landed on the other side of the moon this week and just blasted off of the moon with a robot, but still bringing a sample back. Our rocket lab down in New Zealand just launched a NASA payload up into orbit to monitor the Earth's health.
NASA has ordered a pair of Starships for 2 crewed moon landing missions on tap for later this decade. And one of the astronauts heading to the moon is a Canadian. Each moon crew will rely on NASA's own rocket and capsule to leave Earth, but meet up with Starship in lunar orbit for the ride down to the surface.